On this indictment, you are each charged with rape, contrary to Section 1(1) of the Offences Against the Person Act. And the particulars are that on the 28th of July 1978, you, Alan Marsden, had sexual intercourse with Barbara Kaplan without her consent. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Michael Harris, you are charged with like offence. How do you plead?
Not guilty.
Bernard Osgood, you are charged with like offence. How do you plead?
Not guilty.
Barbara Kaplan is the production manager of the Fulchester plant of Meddings Bottletop Company. Alan Marsden, Michael Harris and Bernard Osgood, a packer at the same plant, have been accused of raping her one July evening in her own home. Bernard Osgood is the son of the managing director of the plant. The case you're about to see is a fictional one. The procedure, however, is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the public.
What I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your full name is Mrs. Barbara Maxine Kaplan?
Yes.
And do you live at Fairfields, Mountford Road, Fulchester?
Yes.
And were you production manager at the Fulchester plant of Meddings Bottletop Company?
Yes. I handed in my resignation after all this had happened.
I see. Now, Mrs. Kaplan, I'd like you to tell the court in as much detail as you can what happened on the evening of Friday, July the 28th. Now, what time did you arrive home from work?
At about 8 o'clock.
And what happened then?
I changed into my dressing gown. It had been a hot day and I felt sticky. I poured myself a drink and sat down with a cigarette to relax, and the doorbell rang. I went to answer it. The three of them were standing there on the doorstep.
Now, who do you mean by the three of them?
The defendants, Bernard Osgood, Michael Harris, and Alan Marsden.
Were they acquaintances of yours?
I didn't know Harris or Marsden at all. I knew Bernard Osgood slightly. He's the son of the managing director at Meddings, and he works, well, for the moment at least, in the packing department there. So I had on occasion exchanged a few words with him.
Had you ever exchanged words of an intimate nature with him?
Good Lord, no. Simply passing the time of day or talking about his work.
Yes, I see. Had you encountered the three defendants earlier that evening?
I'd seen them about half an hour earlier, yes. I'd been round to visit Bernard's father, Dick Osgood, at his home. The three of them were hanging around in the street when I left.
What were they doing?
Tinkering with their motorbikes, I think. They shouted out something to me as I was getting into my car.
Can you remember what it was they shouted at you?
Something like, "Hello, darling, show us your knickers then." I don't know which of them did the shouting.
This was outside Mr. Osgood's house?
Yes.
Did you respond in any way?
What response can one make to such remarks? I just ignored them.
Quite so. And were you surprised to find the three defendants on your doorstep some half an hour later?
Yes, very. Bernard said he'd come to return my scarf. He said I dropped it earlier when they saw me getting into my car. I thanked them and assumed that that was all they wanted. But then Bernard said he had something important to talk to me about. I was feeling tired and asked him if it couldn't wait until Monday.
Monday at work?
Yes. He said no, it was important, I should know now. He said it was to do with his father and could he come in for a minute. He said this in such an urgent manner that I relented and said yes.
Yes. What were Harris and Marsden doing?
Just standing watching. It had started to rain quite heavily and Bernard asked if they could wait inside. I couldn't really say no and leave them standing out there in the rain, so they all followed me into my hall, and I showed Bernard into the sitting room.
Just Bernard?
Yes, I left the other two in the hall.
I see. What happened between you and Bernard Osgood in your sitting room?
Well, once inside, his manner seemed to change. He sat down on the settee, put his feet up on the coffee table, and sort of grinned at me in a strange way.
Now, what do you mean, a strange way?
Well, it was a cross between threatening and triumphant. I suddenly felt very suspicious.
Suspicious of what?
I don't know. I had a strong feeling I'd made a mistake in trusting him and letting him in. I think I realized he wasn't what he was pretending to be.
Did you tell him that?
Not in so many words, no. I asked him firmly to say what he had to say and to please leave. He seemed to find this very amusing. He laughed and said, wasn't I going to offer them all a drink? I said no, this wasn't a social occasion, and asked him what he was playing at. Then he shouted to Harris and Marsden to come in and have a drink.
And did they?
They both came into the room, yes. I told them to get out, but they ignored me. Then Bernard told Marsden to pour drinks for everybody. He said one for the lady, too.
Meaning you?
Yes. I was very confused about what was going on. Harris just stood inside the door like a sentry on guard duty. Bernard was making comments all the time. Stupid comments about the room.
What were these comments?
Stupid things. He liked the wallpaper and what pretty pictures I had. He didn't really say them to me, he said them to the other two. And they laughed and echoed what he said. Yes, very nice pictures, Bernie, that kind of thing. Well, I felt they were trying to make a fool of me, and I told them again and again to leave. They seemed to find all this very amusing. Bernard turned to the other two and said, "She wants us to leave." Now, that's not very nice of her, is it? That's not the way to treat guests. I told them if they didn't get out of my house immediately, I'd call the police. Then Bernard started making these silly tutting noises, and the other two joined in.
Tutting noises?
Yes, a kind of... and all of them doing it together. I know it sounds silly, but it was very threatening.
I see.
My lord, what happened then, Mrs. Kaplan?
I tried to grab the telephone, which was on a small table by the settee, but Bernard was too quick for me. He took the receiver off the hook and put it behind the cushion he was leaning on.
You mean you couldn't get to the telephone?
Not without moving Bernard, and he's a big man.
Yes. What did you do then?
I felt very frightened. I wasn't quite sure how to handle the situation. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. I tried to keep as calm as possible. I didn't want them to see me lose my composure. I couldn't have got out. It was like they'd neatly planned the whole affair.
Now, what do you mean, neatly planned?
Well, they seemed to have planned their positions. And Bernard saw me looking at my watch and said something like, "She's hoping her boyfriend will come and rescue her. Only we know he's not coming, don't we?" My friend David Thomas works in the design department at the plant, and he was working late every night that week on designs for the German order.
I see. Do you think Bernard Osgood knew this?
As the managing director's son, he could easily have heard his father talking about it.
What happened then, Mrs. Kaplan?
They started making overtly sexual remarks about my body, about my legs. Titillating remarks.
Can you remember what these remarks were, Mrs. Kaplan?
Not the exact words, no.
Now, I think you must try, Mrs. Kaplan. Can you remember what those remarks were?
It started with Bernard asking the other two if they thought I was as starchy underneath as I was on top. And then they started making jokes about what I would look like under my dressing gown. Their remarks got more and more obscene and blatantly sexual. Remarks about my mouth and my crutch and what kind of things they would like to do to me. I lost my temper. I shouted at them, but the more I shouted, the more they seemed to enjoy it. Bernard even said stuff like, "She's beautiful when she's angry." Then Marsden told him to shut up and get a move on.
Now, Marsden told Bernard Osgood to shut up and get a move on.
Yes. I thought perhaps he was frightened by what they were doing. I don't know. Anyway, I turned to Marsden and told him that Bernard was going to get him into a lot of trouble. The next thing I knew, Bernard had aimed a blow at my head. I dodged it and fell backwards onto the floor. I hit my side badly on the coffee table and it fell over.
Were you bruised, Mrs. Kaplan?
Yes, here, very badly. The police doctor has a record of it.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Kaplan. What happened then?
I was lying there groaning with the pain, and Bernard suddenly produced this knife and pointed it at my throat. He told me to shut up and open my legs.
May the witness be shown Exhibit 1. Do you recognize this knife, Mrs. Kaplan?
It looks like the knife, yes. I remember the white cross on the handle.
Thank you. The knife belongs to the defendant, Bernard Osgood, my lord. What happened then, Mrs. Kaplan?
He said he didn't want to mark me, but if I didn't shut up and do what he wanted, he would have to.
Now, what did you understand him to mean by mark you?
Cut me. Slash me with the knife. I was terrified. I tried to tell myself that they wouldn't dare to hurt me, but I thought he'd gone mad. I just begged them to leave. Bernard laughed and said something about me not being the boss now, and how does it feel to grovel? Then all three of them raped me.
Now, Mrs. Kaplan, I realize this is most unpleasant for you, but we must have the details of the actual rape. Now, how did it start?
Bernard gave some sort of order.
Yes.
Okay, lads. And they all came towards me. I tried to get up and make a run for the door, but they were all on me. I couldn't even struggle. It was hopeless. Marsden pinned my arms down, and Harris got hold of my head by my hair. Bernard handed Harris the knife and told him to keep it pointed at my throat. Then Bernard, ripped my knickers off and raped me.
Now, by raped you, do you mean had sexual intercourse with you?
Yes.
Exhibit 2, my lord. Mrs. Kaplan, were these the knickers you were wearing on the evening in question?
Yes, they are. That's where they were torn.
I see. May they be shown to the jury? Now, you will notice the tear in the garment. Thank you. Did they undress you further, Mrs. Kaplan?
There was no need. I only had my dressing gown on, and that came open when I fell.
Did Bernard Osgood undress?
No. He only took his trousers down. That's all any of them did.
I see. And what happened when Bernard Osgood had finished raping you?
He took the knife from Harris and told him to have a go while he held the knife at me.
Now, what did he mean by have a go?
To have sexual intercourse with me. He told Harris to have sexual intercourse with me. And then when Harris had finished, Marsden had sexual intercourse with me.
And did they hold a knife at your throat throughout, Mrs. Kaplan?
I'm not sure. I shut my eyes. I couldn't bear to see them looking at me while it was going on.
Of course. What happened after the intercourse had taken place?
Marsden seemed to be very frightened. He wanted to get out. But Bernard Osgood wouldn't go. He stood over me, his legs astride me, and spat on me several times. I don't know how many. The other two kept telling him to leave off. They wanted to get out. Finally, he kicked me in the side where I'd been bruised, and they all left.
And what did you do then?
I just lay there for a long time, trying to get my thoughts together. Then I rushed to the bathroom and was violently sick. I started to wash myself. I felt so disgustingly dirty. I just wanted to scrub myself clean. Then I remembered that you mustn't wash yourself if you've been raped because the police need evidence. It took a tremendous effort of will to stop washing. I went back into the sitting room and sat by the telephone.
Did you telephone the police?
No. I couldn't pick up the receiver. I was trying to regain some composure, to find some strength. I knew the police would want to interrogate me and do an internal examination. I couldn't face that happening. I felt violated enough already. I just sat there stunned for what must have been a long time. David arrived at about 11 and found me. I told him about it and we called the police.
Mrs. Kaplan, would you please tell the court why it was you visited your managing director, Mr. Richard Osgood, on the night in question?
Yes. I'd received a letter informing me that I was to be transferred to another plant. I went to see Dick Osgood to discuss it.
Exactly. Now, you weren't very pleased about this transfer, were you?
I wasn't pleased about it, no.
In fact, you were extremely angry and very upset about it. The board of directors at Meddings had decided that you weren't competent to do your job, and this transfer came as a very humiliating demotion, didn't it?
My lord, I fail to see what my learned friend's account of Mrs. Kaplan's transfer has to do with this case.
My lord, this line of questioning has everything to do with the Mrs. Kaplan's state of mind on the evening in question.
Yes, I think this is a perfectly reasonable line of questioning.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Mrs. Kaplan, I'm suggesting to you that you were so upset about this transfer that you had a few drinks in your office before going home. In fact, you had a few too many drinks, didn't you?
No. I was angry, yes. And I did have a drink before I left. I often do at the end of the day. But I certainly was not drunk, if that's what you're suggesting.
In your opinion, you weren't drunk, Mrs. Kaplan, but you certainly made the impression on Mr. Richard Osgood that you were indeed very drunk.
I am not responsible for his impressions.
Well, now, in a statement I have here from Mr. Osgood, he says that you were overwrought, hysterical, and extremely unbalanced.
I was not any of those things. I merely expressed my anger, and he expressed his towards me. Dick Osgood's problem is that he believes women should be seen and not heard. And so he would be very likely to see a woman expressing her anger in those terms.
Well, why were you so angry with Mr. Osgood?
Because he had deliberately lied to the board of directors about me as a means of getting me transferred.
Yes, I see. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kaplan. Now, what were you wearing on the evening in question before you changed into your dressing gown?
A skirt and blouse.
An extremely low-cut blouse with a very tight belt round your waist?
A normal blouse. Not particularly low cut, no. And the belt was not unduly tight.
Were those the sort of clothes that you normally wear to work?
I wear a variety of clothes to work, depending on the weather. There is nothing sluttish about my dress, if that's what you're suggesting.
But, Mrs. Kaplan, didn't you have the reputation at work for showing your cleavage? Didn't the men, in fact, give you a nickname, Boobsy?
My lord, really?
My lord, one of the defendants worked at the plant, and the impression Mrs. Kaplan makes on him, I believe, has a bearing on this trial.
Yes, I can see no reason to stop this line of questioning. Please answer counsel's question, Mrs. Kaplan.
I believe the men did have a nickname for me. But if men choose to joke about my bust, I can hardly be held responsible. It is a biological fact. There is nothing I can do about it.
But the way you flaunted your figure at work may have led many of the men, not only the defendant Bernard Osgood, to wonder about your intentions.
That suggestion is insulting, chauvinistic rubbish.
Is it? Now, let us return to your arrival home that summer's evening in July. You had yet another drink, and then you changed into your dressing gown. Why did you change into your dressing gown?
As I've said, I was hot. It had been a sweltering hot day. I wanted something loose to wear.
But am I not right in understanding that you wore nothing, but nothing at all under this dressing gown except a little black pair of flimsy panties?
That's right.
And you answer the doorbell clad in this scant attire?
Do you think I should have gone upstairs and changed? My dressing gown is not scant. It comes down to my feet and has a belt around the waist. I often wear it around the house. Well, there's nothing unusual about that, surely.
No, but it is a little suggestive, don't you think?
Don't be ridiculous. If a full-length dressing gown is supposed to be suggestive, what's a bikini or what's a building site worker without his shirt on?
So, you answered the doorbell and you saw three lads on a very laudable mission returning to you your lost scarf, and you invited them in to have a drink with you.
That's not what happened.
Well, I'm suggesting to you, Mrs. Kaplan, that that is what did happen. You were very upset indeed about the scene you'd created at the Osgood's house earlier. You had by this time a great deal too much to drink, and in this excitable and unbalanced state of mind, you were both flirtatious and sexually provocative to these three young men.
I was not, and it has never been in my character to behave like that.
My lord, under the Sexual Offences Amendment Act of 1976, Clause 2, I should like to question Mrs. Kaplan about a specific episode in her past which I believe has a very significant bearing on this trial.
Very well. I'll discuss this matter of law with you and Mr. Bryant in the absence of the jury. Members of the jury, will you be good enough to retire for a short time? You may stand down, Mrs. Kaplan. Very well, let us proceed. I would remind you that you're still under oath, Mrs. Kaplan. Mr. Ireland.
My lord. Mrs. Kaplan, how old are you?
38.
I should like to remind you of a time 5 years ago in 1973. Now, that was the year that you divorced your husband, wasn't it?
Yes. We'd been separated for the 2 years before.
And at that time, you were having an affair with a Mr. James Quinn, weren't you?
Yes, I was. My lord, what has this got to do with this trial?
I have approved this line of questioning. Go on, Mr. Ireland.
My lord. Could you tell us how old Mr. Quinn was when you were having this affair with him?
23.
23. Now, here was a young man of 23, and you, a woman of 33, were having an affair with a man 10 years younger than yourself.
You say that as if it was something perverted. It was perfectly natural. It was a deeply fulfilling emotional experience for both of us. And I have known many men much older than myself, who've had affairs with girls in their teens.
Well, I think that is beside the point, Mrs. Kaplan. I would suggest to you that this episode in your past life indicates that you as a woman have a propensity, an attraction, if you like, for finding virile young lads like these three men sexually attractive.
That's absurd. I chose to have a relationship with James. It was an emotional involvement. I did not choose to have any relationship whatsoever with those three men. They forced their way into my house and raped me.
But Mrs. Kaplan, you've just said that you invited them in for a drink.
They come their way in for a drink.
You didn't shut the door in their faces.
Well, no, I had no idea of their intentions, so I had no cause to.
Don't you think that inviting 3 relative strangers into your house is in itself a suggestive act? Especially dressed in a dressing gown.
No! If I invited you into my hall, I wouldn't expect you to take it as an invitation to have sex with me.
So you are saying that you had no intention whatsoever of having sex with these 3 men?
None whatsoever.
You actively objected?
Yes, I did.
You didn't enjoy these young men admiring your body?
No, I did not.
Didn't you find it rather flattering and reassuring that a woman of your advancing age should still be attractive to young men?
No. I found it lurid, obnoxious, and insulting.
I see, so you did your very best to resist their sexual advances.
Yes.
Well, Mrs. Kaplan, you've only got 1 bruise to show for it, and that could have been very easily caused by a normal flaw. Your dressing gown wasn't torn. There's a small hole in your panties that you could have easily have created for yourself. You suffered no real physical harm. And I maintain, in the absence of any evidence to show that you resisted, isn't it very difficult for anyone to believe that you were, in actual fact, raped?
There were 3 men. One of them with a knife held at my throat. What do you expect?
Yes, but you see, you have no evidence to substantiate that this knife was used to threaten you with.
Really, my lord, Mrs. Kaplan has told us they used the knife to threaten her with. That is evidence enough. Must she have knife marks as well? I've allowed my learned friend considerable latitude. He should desist from making mere comment.
Yes, Mr. Bryant, I can see your point.
I have actually completed that line of questioning anyway, my lord.
Good. Do you perhaps have another line you'd care to pursue?
Thank you, my lord. Now, you said that the lads arrived at your house at 8 o'clock, but you're not sure when they left.
Yes.
Well, shall we say 8:40? After all, they were in their local pub at 9.
If you like.
And you eventually telephoned the police at midnight.
Yes.
But that's 4 hours later, Mrs. Kaplan. Why did you wait all that time?
As I've said, I couldn't face the police. I couldn't even face up to what had happened to me, let alone talk about it.
But you changed your mind and telephoned the police.
Yes. I knew deep down I would have to tell the police, but it took me all that time to get myself together to be able to do it.
May I suggest to you, Mrs. Kaplan, what really happened during those few hours that you were alone and before your lover arrived? You were drunk, and you naturally vomited.
I was not drunk. I vomited because I was so sickened by what had happened to me.
You returned to your sitting room, and you fell asleep on the settee. Quite a natural thing to do for someone who's drunk too much.
My lord, how many times do I have to tell this man I was not drunk?
Mrs. Kaplan, you must allow the defense to put his case. Go on, Mr. Ireland.
Thank you, my lord. Now, the next thing you knew, Mrs. Kaplan, was that your boyfriend had arrived, and you awoke to find the room in a mess. How are you to explain all these obvious signs of debauchery, especially to your lover? You explained it to him by telling him that you'd been raped.
That's absolutely not true.
Isn't it? You hadn't telephoned the police before he arrived. It was obvious by the mess in the room that something had happened. You were afraid that these 3 lads would gossip about your lovemaking and that your lover would overhear the gossip. So in your drunken and confused state of mind, you were looking for the easy way out. And later you realized that to make your story more plausible, you had to telephone the police.
Easy way out? Easy to cry rape? You think it's easy, do you? You think it's pleasant for me to go through all the humiliation, degradation, police interrogation, medical examination, this trial? No woman in her right mind would willfully put herself through this horror.
No further questions, my lord.
The case of the Queen against Marsden, Harris and Osgood will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Barbara Kaplan, formerly the production manager at Meddings Bottle Top Company, has accused Alan Marsden, Michael Harris and Bernard Osgood of raping her in her home one Friday evening in July. We come to the trial on its second day. The case is a fictional one. The procedure, however, is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public. The police medical officer has just completed his examination in chief. The facts he presented to the court were firstly that sexual intercourse had taken place between the three defendants and Barbara Kaplan on the evening in question, and secondly that Barbara Kaplan had received some severe bruises on the left-hand side of her body. It was not possible for the medical officer to determine the cause of the bruising. There were no questions from the defense counsel. We now join the trial as David Thomas, a friend of Barbara Kaplan, enters the witness box.
I swear by Almighty God...
My lord, I really must object to this witness being called. There was a gap of more than 2 hours between the time Mrs. Kaplan says she was raped and the time this witness arrived in our house. Now, during those few hours, any number of things could have happened which this witness cannot possibly know anything about. Now, bearing that in mind, I believe that this witness's testimony cannot be called evidence.
2 hours doesn't seem a long enough time gap for me to have to exclude this witness. I think we should continue, Mr. Ireland.
My lord.
Please proceed.
Now, Mr. Thomas, for how long previous to the evening in question had you and Mrs. Kaplan been having a relationship?
6 months, very soon after she came to Fulchester.
I see. Do you feel that you know Mrs. Kaplan quite well?
I know her very well.
Did you go to Mrs. Kaplan's house on Friday, July the 28th at about 11 o'clock at night?
Yes.
Now, can you describe to us what you found when you arrived there?
I found Barbara, Mrs. Kaplan, on the settee in the sitting room.
How did you get into the house, Mr. Thomas?
I have my own latchkey. I let myself in.
I see. Please go on.
Well, I called out to Barbara in the hall, but she hadn't replied, so I went into the sitting room. She was sitting on the settee in her dressing gown, sitting absolutely still, as white as a sheet, surrounded by this mess. For a moment, I thought she must be ill or something. When I spoke to her, she didn't look at me. She didn't even hear me.
What did you say to her?
I asked her what on earth had happened. When she didn't move or say a word, I realized something terrible must have happened. Then she told me she'd been raped.
And they were the first words that she said to you?
Yes. She went on to say it had been horrible and disgusting. Then she cried. She cried for a long time. I'd never seen her in such distress before. Usually she's so calm and in control of herself. I made her some coffee, and then we talked about what to do. My immediate feelings were to go out and find the bastards and beat the living daylights out of them. I wanted to kill them. But Barbara was quite adamant that she had to handle it herself. She said she was going to call the police when she felt strong enough to face them. I was worried about what effect a rape prosecution would have on her status at work, but she was quite determined to go through with it.
Did you in fact try to dissuade her?
I'm afraid I did, yes. I didn't want her to go through more pain, but then I hadn't been the rape victim. Barbara had, and she was determined that they shouldn't get away with it.
Would you say she's the sort of person who could invent a story of rape simply to cover her behavior or out of spite?
Absolutely not. No, never. She's a very direct person. If she's angry with someone, she'll tell them to their face. She would never connive or scheme behind anyone's back.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Thomas, what would you say if I suggested to you that when you arrived at Mrs. Kaplan's house, she was asleep on the settee and that your arrival woke her up from a drunken sleep?
I'd say you got it wrong. She had an occasional drink just like everybody else, but I've never known her drink too much.
Yes, well, there's always a first time, isn't there, Mr. Thomas? And 6 months isn't very long to know somebody, is it? Now, you say the room was in a mess, an overturned chair, a broken bottle, etc. Did it ever occur to you that Mrs. Kaplan might have created this mess for herself? To give you the impression that a violent scene had taken place and to lend weight to her story that she'd been raped?
You're getting your arguments muddled, aren't you? One minute you say she was asleep, the next minute you say she was busy wrecking her own sitting room.
For nearly 3 hours between the time the lads left the house and the time you arrived, nobody but Mrs. Kaplan knew what was going on in this house. I'm suggesting some alternative possibilities for your consideration.
I have no reason to doubt that what she told me was true. I was with her. I experienced her shock, her tears, and her anger. And nothing will convince me she was not telling the truth.
Yes, but you must admit that you were in rather a delicate position, Mr. Thomas, weren't you? Now, might I ask you how you would have felt had she told you that she had willingly and actively encouraged 3 young men to make love to her?
It would never enter my head that a woman like Barbara would do such a thing.
It would never enter your head. The idea of such a notion would be too shocking. You never doubted her story for 1 single minute.
No, I have not.
I mean, to doubt such a story would be to doubt the very basis of your relationship, wouldn't it? I mean, to entertain the notion that your lover had been unfaithful with you with not 1, but 3 men.
I find the idea too ludicrous to think about.
Yes, so it's very likely, isn't it, Mr. Thomas, that she might invent such a story to protect you and to protect her relationship with you from the truth.
This is just a game to you, isn't it? A woman has been raped in the most terrible and
Mr. Thomas,
humiliating way possible.
please,
and
Mr.
you play
Thomas.
games with words and logic
For
just
the
to win
third
arguments.
time, Mr. Thomas.
I'm sorry, my lord.
Very well. You must try to restrain yourself. Yes, Mr. Ireland.
My lord, Mr. Thomas, to your knowledge, has Mrs. Kaplan ever been unfaithful to you before?
What?
My lord, I really must protest.
Ireland.
I'm trying to establish, my lord, a possible bias in the witness's testimony due to his relationship with the complainant.
My lord, not only is the question extremely distasteful, its implications are unethical. If the witness answers no, then my learned friend will suggest this somehow makes the witness biased. If the witness answers yes, my learned friend will certainly suggest that this makes Mrs. Kaplan a loose woman.
You needn't answer that question, Mr. Thomas.
No more questions, my lord.
You are Zoe May Grimshaw. You live at 21 Westway, Fulchester.
Yes,
You work as a waitress and barmaid at the Fox and Hare Inn on the Fulchester Industrial Estate.
yes.
Are the defendants, Bernard Osgood, Alan Marsden and Michael Harris, frequent customers at the Fox and Hare Inn?
Yes, it's just outside factory gates, and Bernie Osgood often meets other 2 there after work for a pint and a game of darts.
I see. Do you know Mrs. Barbara Kaplan?
Yes, we take meals over to top staff at Meddings when they have do's on, and I used to chat to her then sometimes.
What do you mean by dues?
Functions, my lord, you know, special occasions.
My lord, have you heard the defendants discuss Mrs. Kaplan at any time, Mrs. Grimshaw?
Well, about 2 weeks before we heard about the rape, they were in, it were a Friday night, and I heard them talking about her then, yes.
I see. Can you describe what you heard?
Mrs. Kaplan had come into Saloon Bar to buy some cigarettes, and Mike Harris, he were buying drinks at time, and he spotted her. You can see through to Saloon front public, you see, across bar. Anyway, he shouted something to her like, hello, darling, are you doing out tonight? You know, usual thing.
Did Mrs. Kaplan respond?
Of course not, she just bought her cigarettes and left.
Quite so. What happened then, Mrs. Grimshaw?
Well, then Bernie Osgood, he were laughing at Harris, and he asked him if he knew who that lady, meaning Mrs. Kaplan, was. Harris said he didn't know, and Bernie Osgood said that she was Boobsy Big Tits, as he called her. He must have called her that before, because both Harris and Marsden said, oh, is that her? You know, like they'd heard about her but never seen her before. And then Bernie Osgood, he started mimicking her, you know, walking around bar pretending he were Mrs. Kaplan. And he stuck 2 glasses up his jumper, making out they were breasts, and tried to mimic where she talked. Prancing around bar, he were saying things like, oh, I'm Boobsy Big Tits, an art production manager from Meddings Bottle Top Factory. And then he come out with crude jokes like, do you have trouble with your screwing, that sort of thing. Old men were laughing, you know. A lot of them work at Meddings, you see.
Yes, I see. What happened then?
Then, Mike Harris said a very crude joke. Do I have to say it?
No, Mrs. Grimshaw. Just tell us what happened after the joke.
Well, when it had all quietened down, 3 of them were sat at bar on stools, and I could hear them talking while they were washing glasses. And Bernie Osgood said that his dad was trying to get rid of Mrs. Kaplan from factory, and that the only reason she got that job were because Meddings Jr. fancied his chances.
Who is Meddings Jr.?
Meddings is a family concern, my lord. Meddings Jr. would be the name used to refer to the son.
Thank you. Carry on, Mrs. Grimshaw.
From what Bernie Osgood was saying, you could tell, you know, he really had it in for her.
Now, would you please confine yourself to what you heard, Mrs. Grimshaw? Don't tell us your personal opinions.
Sorry. Well, then Bernie Osgood said, and I distinctly heard this, that Mrs. Kaplan was a stuck-up bitch and that what she needed was a good gangbang.
Now, you're quite sure those are the very words he used? A
Yeah.
good gangbang?
Yes, I'm certain, because I was disgusted when I heard him. And then Mike Harris went on to say he thought she'd love it and beg for more. They laughed at that.
Thank you, Mrs. Grimshaw.
Mrs. Grimshaw, how long have you been working in public houses?
2 years, but I only work 3 nights a week now.
I see, 2 years. Now, during those 2 years, you must have overheard a lot of men's conversations.
Yeah, you can't help it, really. I mean, they either trying to chat you up or treat you like you don't exist, like portrait furniture at Decor, you know.
Now, with your extensive experience of conversations between men together, especially men who've been drinking, wouldn't you say that the conversation that you've just related is fairly normal? I mean, you could even say that it was typical of men joking in a pub.
Well, I'd say it were cruder than most, and they specifically talked about gangbanging Mrs. Kaplan, and then 2 weeks later I heard they had gone and raped her.
Mrs. Grimshaw, I must remind you that the purpose of this trial is to try and establish whether this was indeed rape or not. Now, Mrs. Grimshaw, did you at any time ever hear them mention Mrs. Kaplan's address?
No.
Well, did you hear them making plans about when they intended to commit the act that you've described?
No.
I see, so you only heard them jokingly say what Mrs. Kaplan needed was a good gangbang, but you never heard them say that that was what they intended to do.
Not in so many words, no.
But did you ever hear them use the word rape at all?
Well, that's what a gangbang is, a kind of rape, isn't it?
No, Mrs. Grimshaw, it is not. There is nothing in the term gangbang to suggest that the woman does not consent to the act. Indeed, some women actively encourage it.
Well, I've never heard of a woman that did.
No. Why didn't you warn Mrs. Kaplan?
Well, I didn't think to. I mean, I wish I had now, but I just didn't think.
Didn't think what?
Well, I didn't think they really would.
Exactly. You mean you didn't take the conversation that you eavesdropped seriously? It was a joke, wasn't it? It was a little bit of harmless fun. And it wasn't until you learnt of Mrs. Kaplan's accusation of rape that you decided to take something seriously that was only meant in jest.
Yeah, but...
Mrs. Grimshaw, do you seriously believe that if these 3 men had intended to rape Mrs. Kaplan, they would have joked about it in a public house, thereby incriminating themselves?
And repeat the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your name is Alan Marsden and you live at 36 Churchill House, Martletts Estate, Fulchester.
Yes.
Now, on the evening of July the 28th, did you, with your 2 companions, Bernard Osgood and Michael Harris, go to the house of Mrs. Barbara Kaplan?
Yes.
Why did you go to Mrs. Kaplan's house?
Well, we took a scarf back, you know.
How did you come to be in possession of this scarf?
Oh, I didn't have it. Bernie did.
Well, how did Bernard come to be in possession of the scarf?
Well, Bernie picked it up, like, after she dropped it. We called out to her as she was getting in a car, but she didn't seem to hear us.
I see, and it was then that you decided to return the scarf to her.
That's it, yeah.
Now, what happened when the 3 of you arrived at Mrs. Kaplan's house?
On the doorstep, like?
Yes, on the doorstep.
Well, she opened the door.
You mean Mrs. Kaplan opened the door?
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, Bernie gave her back a scarf.
How did Mrs. Kaplan react?
She was really grateful, like.
And what happened then?
Well, I can't remember exactly all of it.
Well, try and tell us all you can remember.
She was going on about how wet we was. It was raining, like, so that's why, and she asked us in for a drink.
Mrs. Kaplan invited you in for a drink?
Yeah, it was really weird.
And how do you mean, weird?
Well, she was weird.
Do you mean that Mrs. Kaplan was behaving in a weird manner?
That's it, yeah.
Can you describe this manner?
Well, she was lurching, you know, and leaning on the door to steady herself, like she was pissed. Sorry, I mean drunk.
Now, was there anything else to indicate to you in her behaviour that Mrs. Kaplan was drunk?
Anything else? Oh, yeah, she had this drink in her hand.
Now, she was lurching, she was unsteady on her feet, and she had a drink in her hand. How was Mrs. Kaplan dressed?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was weird, too. She had this dressing gown thing on and nothing on her feet, like she was just off to bed or something.
And where did she take you in the house?
A front room.
Now, Mrs. Kaplan says she only invited Bernard Osgood into the front room, or sitting room as she prefers to call it, and she asked you and Michael Harris to wait in the hall.
Oh, she never did. She asked us all in there.
I see. What happened then?
Well, she said for us to help ourselves to drinks, so we did. She had 'em in this cupboard-like in the corner.
Go on.
Well, she sat on the couch and she started giving Bernie the eye like. Well, I reckon she'd taken a liking to him, you know, fancied him at work or something, I don't know. Anyhow, I just wandered around.
Wandered around?
Yeah, well, I don't like sitting down much. I felt a bit uncomfortable, to tell you the truth.
Well, why did you feel uncomfortable?
Well, it's this posh pad-like, and she's sitting there on the couch with her legs up in front of her. You know what I mean? Showing everything and that, and giggling. No, I don't know, I just did.
Could you clearly see her legs?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, she was sat with them up in front of her, flaunting herself like, you know.
What was the conversation about?
No, I wasn't listening that much. Bernie did most of the talking. Pretty pictures, wallpaper, them kind of things. He's used to that kind of talk.
And how long did the conversation go on for?
A while, I suppose.
And what happened then?
Well, she had this bottle on top of the cupboard. She said it was a special booze or something, I don't know. Anyhow, she stood on a chair to get it down and she fell off.
Did she hurt herself?
A bit, I suppose. She was groaning and that.
And what happened then?
Well, Bernie went to help her up and they started kissing and that.
Who started kissing who?
Both together, I suppose. I don't know.
Go on.
And then Bernie had a go at her.
What do you mean, had a go at her?
Well, they started to do it, you know.
Do you mean to say that they had sexual intercourse together?
Yeah.
Now, did Mrs. Kaplan object to Bernard having intercourse with her?
Oh, no, she was really enjoying it.
I see. And what were you doing while they were having intercourse?
Watching.
Sorry?
Well, I was watching.
Did Mrs. Kaplan object to you watching?
She never said nothing.
And what happened when Bernard finished having intercourse with her?
Well, she sort of held her hand up to Mike like, and he took over. I didn't exactly know what to make of it all, but there it was happening in front of my eyes.
Now, so you were having a casual chat for a while, let's say 15 minutes. And then Mrs. Kaplan stood on a chair to reach down a bottle from the top of the cupboard, and then she fell off the chair.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, did she fall off the chair before or after she took hold of the bottle?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know?
Well, I wasn't looking. I just turned round when I heard her fall and saw her sprawled out on the floor.
Didn't you hear the bottle break?
No, so it must have been before.
You seem very uncertain.
No, I remember now. It was before.
We know there was a broken bottle on the floor. Mr. Thomas has told us that in his evidence. When did that bottle break?
Sorry?
When did that bottle break?
Well, when she fell, she knocked the coffee table over. It fell off and broke then.
Now, are you sure?
Yeah.
You're confused, aren't you?
Well, it was a long time ago.
I suggest your confusion is due to the fact that the entire story of Mrs. Kaplan falling off the chair has been invented by the three of you to account for her bruises.
Well, that's not true.
Oh, I see. You just happened to be looking the other way while she was standing on the chair.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Marsden, the three of you must all have had sexual intercourse with Mrs. Kaplan within the space of 10 minutes, mustn't you?
I suppose so.
Did she have an orgasm?
Well, of course she did. That's what she was after, wasn't it?
Did she have three, once with each of you?
I suppose so, yeah.
Do you know anything about female sexuality, Mr. Marsden?
Well, I've been with girls and things.
No, I mean, do you know anything about what goes on inside a woman's body during lovemaking?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about a woman's eroticism, Mr. Marsden. How long it takes for a woman to become physically aroused. How to stimulate a woman. How long it takes for her to achieve orgasm, that sort of thing.
I just do it by instinct.
Yes. Because if you understood any of those things, I don't think you would stand there and blatantly try to claim that any woman could achieve sexual satisfaction or fulfillment from having three strangers, each in turn, one after the other, using her as a sex object and nothing more within the space of 10 minutes.
Look, she was weird. I don't know what turns her on.
Well, you're changing your mind. Are you saying perhaps she didn't enjoy it?
No. Look, it's just that, you know, women either come, don't they, or they're frigid. It's not my fault.
Oh, I see. So whatever they feel has nothing to do with you or your behavior. Perhaps even in your ignorance you imagine women can get sexual satisfaction from being raped.
We never raped her. She wanted it, and we gave it to her.
Oh, yes, and having given it to her, you left her lying there on the floor. I submit that was the act of guilty men, Mr. Marsden, to run away from their crime.
We never ran away. She got what she wanted. There was no point in hanging around, that's all. Anyhow, I reckon she was a bit of a nutter.
A nutter?
A nymph, you know. And I just wanted to get out.
Do you mean a nymphomaniac?
Yeah, that's it. She was a nymphomaniac. Well, she must have been, mustn't she?
Mr. Harris, Your description of the events of the evening in question bear remarkable similarity to that of your friend Marston's.
Yeah, well, it would be, wouldn't it? We were both there.
I would suggest both stories are so similar it's almost as if you sat down together to learn your lines, or invent the same lies, perhaps.
I told it like it happened.
Now, you and Alan Marsden and Bernard Osgood are close friends, aren't you?
Yeah, I reckon we're good mates.
Spend most of your spare time together, don't you?
I reckon we do, yeah.
Do you set aside a great deal of time for going on errands of mercy, helping old ladies across the road, doing good deeds for the day, that sort of thing?
I don't get you.
No, you don't, do you? And yet you expect us to believe that on the evening of Friday, July the 28th, you and your two friends returned a lost scarf to a lady whom you scarcely knew out of kindness.
Why not? There was something to do.
Yes, and I suggest it was a good excuse for going to Mrs. Kaplan's house, conning your way into her sitting room where you intended to rape her.
No, that's not it. We just picked up the scarf and we were going down the Salts, which is right past her place anyway. And Bernie said to drop it off on the way. He knew her, didn't he?
You were going down the Salts. Do you mean the disused airport?
Yeah, we often go down there of an evening.
Why?
To have a burn-up on the old bikes.
Can you explain what a burn-up is?
Yeah, it's going fast. A lot of the lads go out there of an evening.
My lord, it was pouring with rain and you were going down the Salts.
Rain don't make no difference to us. Makes it more exciting.
Oh, I see. It makes it more exciting, does it? But you have already told us that when Mrs. Kaplan saw you so wet and bedraggled on her doorstep, she invited you in.
Yeah. Well, women are like that, aren't they?
Are they? Now, it was Bernie's idea to return the lost scarf, and as I recall, it was Bernie's idea to go for a burn-up. Bernie make all your decisions for you, does he?
I never said it was his idea to go for a burn-up. We all decided together.
No, but you usually do as he says, don't you? I mean, he does the talking, makes the decisions.
No.
Do you think he's tough?
He can look after himself.
Do you admire his toughness?
I don't know what you mean.
I mean, do you think he's special?
No, he's just one of us.
Oh, that's what you like to think. It's not quite like that, is it? You and Alan live on the estate. Bernard lives in a big house up near the park. You and Alan went to Mountford Comprehensive. Bernard went away to boarding school. You and Alan have second-hand bikes. Bernard has a brand-new Triumph. It was Bernard who got you into Mrs. Kaplan's sitting room. It was Bernard who did the talking. And I put it to you, it was Bernard who took out his knife, pointed it at Mrs. Kaplan,
No.
and threatened to mark her with it unless she did as she was told.
No, he didn't do that.
But he did take out the knife, didn't he?
Not that I saw.
You are confused, Mr. Harris. Mrs. Kaplan has already identified the knife earlier in this trial.
Well, maybe it fell out of his pocket and she saw it, but he didn't threaten her with it.
Fell out of his pocket. Isn't that rather a coincidence, Mr. Harris?
Look, I don't know how she saw the knife, but he didn't threaten her with it. I know that. She made that up. If you ask me, she'd have liked that. Bit of a threat. Probably what turns her on.
The case of the Queen against Marsden, Harris and Osgood will be concluded tomorrow when the jury reaches its verdict in the Crown Court. Alan Marsden, Michael Harris and Bernard Osgood have been jointly charged with raping Mrs. Barbara Kaplan on a Friday evening in July. Barbara Kaplan was the production manager at the Fulchester plant of Meddings Bottletop Company, where Bernard Osgood is also employed. She's claimed that the three men tricked their way into her home, threatened her with a knife and raped her. The defence has claimed that Mrs. Kaplan was very upset that evening because she'd just received notice of transfer. And the transfer was in fact a humiliating demotion. Consequently, she'd drunk too much. And when the three men came round to her house, she both encouraged their advances and consented to intercourse. The case you're about to see is a fictional one. The procedure, however, is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the public. The trial is now in its third day, and the defendant, Bernard Osgood, has just been sworn in.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mr. Osgood, could you please tell the court exactly what did happen when you and your two companions, Michael Harris and Alan Marsden, arrived at Mrs. Kaplan's house?
Yes. Well, we rang the doorbell, and she answered it in a dressing gown. She had a drink in her hand, and she was swaying on her feet. I gave her back the scarf, and then she invited us in for a drink with her.
Did you accept her invitation?
Well, yes, of course. Who wouldn't? I thought it was a bit strange. I didn't think she liked me. She'd always been very aloof and on a high horse at work. And now here she was, looking really tarty in that dressing gown, swaying around, inviting us in for drinks with her.
Now, what do you mean by swaying around?
Well, she was drunk. One minute she was laughing wildly, and then the next she was acting as if the world had caved in around her, smoking one cigarette after another.
Where did she take you all?
Into her sitting room. She plonked herself down on the settee, pulled her knees up in front of her so that her dressing gown came undone, showing everything. And then she started to give me the eye. Come and sit next to me, Bernie, please, patting the settee. So I sat there, and the next thing I know is her knees resting against my body, and she's feeling me up with her toes.
Feeling you with her toes?
Yes. I wasn't going to make any advances towards her, was I? She was the production manager at work. I was a bit worried at first. A bit scared, I suppose. Anyway, then I decided just to sit back and enjoy it.
What happened then?
Like the others said, we talked a bit. Small talk, you know the kind of thing. She was fidgeting, giggling, flirting away. I said I didn't like the stuff she'd given me to drink. Dubonnet it was. And I saw a bottle of brandy on top of the cupboard. Well, she insisted on getting it down for me. I think that was just an excuse for her to stand on the chair and reach for it with us looking at it. Anyhow, she fell off the chair, and the next thing I know, she's lying on the floor, giggling away, asking me to help her up. Very provocative. Her dressing gown had come undone, and she was, to say the least, tempting. It was an open invitation, so I took it. Boom.
Invitation to what?
Well, to have sex with her. I started kissing her. She didn't object. She loved it. And then I made it with her, like any bloke would.
Now, by made it with her, do you mean to say that you had sexual intercourse with her?
Yes.
Now, did she at any time tell you that she didn't want to have sexual intercourse with her?
No, she wanted it. She loved it. She'd been making a play for it ever since we got there.
Could Mr. Osgood be shown exhibit number 1, please? Thank you. Now, do you recognise this knife?
Yes, it's my penknife. Had it for donkey's years.
Now, Barbara Kaplan claimed in her evidence in chief that you threatened her with this knife to induce her to have intercourse with her.
Pack of lies. No, I got it out all right. When she got on the chair to get the bottle, I took it out because it's got a corkscrew on it.
Could you show us, please?
Yeah. Corkscrew, bottle opener, blade, scissors, the lot.
Now, after Mrs. Kaplan fell off the chair, what did you do with the knife?
I put it down on the settee and jumped up to help her. I remembered it just before I left.
Could Mrs. Kaplan see the knife when you put it on the settee?
Well, yes, of course she could. That's how she knew it had a white cross on the handle. She wouldn't have known that if I'd been holding it. My hand would have covered it up, wouldn't it?
Now, in your opinion, did Mrs. Kaplan make it perfectly clear that she wanted the three of you to make love to her?
She couldn't have made it any clearer. She was giggling away about her private dream fantasies, which was to be screwed by 3 handsome boys. She liked calling us boys. She did that a lot.
Now, what do you say to Mrs. Kaplan's claim that after the three of you had had sexual intercourse with her, that you stood over her and spat on her?
I'd say that she's got a very good imagination. Maybe that's what she secretly wished had happened. I don't know what turns her on.
Tell me, Mr. Osgood, have you ever been a member of the Royal Air Force?
No, why?
You're wearing an RAF tie and a suit. In fact, all 3 defendants seem at pains to present a very respectable image.
My lord, the defendant's dress is not the concern of this court.
Could we continue with the evening in question, Mr. Bryant?
My lord. Mr. Osgood, did you go to Mrs. Kaplan's home with a specific intention of having sex with her?
Well, no, of course not. Look at her. She's nearly as old as my mother. I didn't even fancy her till after she opened the door with the dressing gown on.
Were you aware that you would be alone in the house that evening?
No.
Would I be right to assume you know a great deal about what goes on behind the scenes at Meddings?
I know a bit, not much. I don't take that much interest. It's just a job to me.
Where were you at 6:30 on the evening in question?
Eating dinner, I suppose.
Eating dinner with your family in the dining room?
Yes.
Where is the family telephone?
In the hall.
In the hall just outside the dining room door?
Yes.
Yes, you'll recall that the telephone rang during the meal and that your father went out to answer it.
Well, it might have done. The phone often rings from during meal times. I don't take that much notice.
But you could scarcely fail to hear, could you, sitting in the next room eating your meal? I suggest you overheard your father and Mr. Thomas discuss the German order. I suggest you overheard them agree that Mr. Thomas should remain at the plant all evening working on the designs and then deliver them to your father's house about 10 o'clock that night. I put it to you, it was then that you realized that Mrs. Kaplan would be alone and undisturbed that evening.
I didn't think that, and I didn't hear any of the conversation because I wasn't listening.
Your visit to Mrs. Kaplan's home on that summer's evening in July was very far from spontaneous, Mr. Osgood. It was, in fact, very carefully and neatly planned.
That's just not true.
Now, tell me, does your father discuss Mudding's affairs at home? I mean, does he talk about difficult decisions he may have to take or plans he has for the business over breakfast?
He does a bit. I don't take much of it in, though. I told you, I'm not that interested.
But surely your father has big plans for you. Doesn't he want you to rise up the promotion ladder like he did? Doesn't he want you to learn everything you can from him?
My lord, I really do not see what this has got to do with the case.
My lord, I would suggest the defendant has reasons for choosing Mrs. Kaplan as victim. It's very important I explore those reasons.
That seems reasonable to me.
My lord, Mr. Osgood, would I be right in suggesting your father intensely disliked Mrs. Kaplan?
My lord, the defendant cannot be expected to answer questions of such an intimate nature concerning his father's relationships with a third party.
My lord, the third party does happen to be the complainant.
Yes, I know. I think you must rephrase the question, Mr. Bryant.
My lord, Mr. Osgood, is it right that your father frequently expressed out loud and within your hearing his dislike for Mrs. Kaplan?
My father's feelings for the lady are his affair. I didn't care for her one way or the other. She was production manager and I was doing a job, and that's it.
I suggest you did care. I suggest you took a great deal of notice whenever your father mentioned Mrs. Kaplan's affairs, so that you could use the information to make jokes about it to your workmates. You made jokes about her being a man dressed up in woman's clothes. You made jokes about her figure. You made jokes about the sex life you imagined her to be leading. You told your workmates she was incompetent at her job. You used every titbit of information you could glean from your father to elaborate your nasty stories, didn't you?
Look, there's a lot of joking goes on at work. I get called Prince Charming because I'm the boss's son.
Now, you also said, the next thing I knew, she was lying there, very provocative, giggling and asking me to help her up. The police doctor found extensive bruises on the side of Mrs. Kaplan's body, and you say she was lying there giggling? Wouldn't she be in intense pain following that fall?
She was so drunk she was giggling and groaning at the same time.
Ah, yes, I'd forgotten your claim that she was drunk. But just as I suggest you're lying when you say Mrs. Kaplan was drunk, I also suggest you've invented the story of her falling off the chair simply to account for her bruises. Bruises which you yourself inflicted upon her, firstly when you struck her so hard she fell against the table, and secondly when you kicked her just before you left the house.
I didn't kick her. Well, why should I kick her? Look, she got them when she fell off the chair.
Now, something else that intrigues me, Mr. Osgood, about your knife. Now, you say you took it out when you saw Mrs. Kaplan reaching down a bottle which you recognized to be Napoleon brandy.
Yes.
Oh, but surely, Mr. Osgood, you, as a man of the world, would know that Napoleon brandy doesn't require a corkscrew. It can be very easily uncorked by hand.
Yes. But you have to cut the plastic cover off first.
I suggest you took out the knife to threaten Mrs. Kaplan, and that you threatened to mark her with it unless she did as she was told, and that then you raped her. And when you had all finished raping her, you decided you wanted to show off in front of your friends by humiliating her even more. So you stood astride her, and you spat on her. And that, Mr. Osgood, was when you left your knife lying on the floor next to her head. And that was when Mrs. Kaplan saw the white cross on the handle.
She's made the whole story up.
Now, you and your two friends, Alan Marsden and Michael Harris, spend a great deal of time together, don't you?
Fair amount, yeah.
Yes. Would you say you consider yourself the leader of your little group?
No. We're friends. We hang around together. There's no leader.
But you make most of the decisions, don't you? I mean, what to do, where to go. The other two look up to your bravado and your toughness. I mean, after all, you are the biggest, the strongest, and the toughest. They admire you, don't they?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them that.
Oh, I think you do know, Mr. Osgood. I think you're proud of it. Having two lads looking up to you, doing everything you tell them, trying to act as big and tough as you are.
I don't see what you're getting at.
But you do think you're tough, don't you?
Well, I can handle myself in most situations, if that's what you mean, yeah.
Of course. And that's a difficult image to sustain, isn't it?
I haven't got an image.
You have to keep thinking of more and more daring exploits to remind them that you're the big guy, the boss still. And that's difficult, isn't it? And your last daring exploit went a little too far, didn't it?
You are Mr. Richard Rodney Osgood, father of the defendant Bernard Osgood.
Yes, I am.
And you live at the Elms Park Drive, Fulchester.
Yes, I do.
And you are managing director at Meddings Bottle Top Plant, Fulchester, where your son Bernard is employed and Mrs. Kaplan used to be an employee.
That's correct.
Now, Mr. Osgood, did Barbara Kaplan visit your house on the evening of July the 28th?
Yes, she did. At about 7 o'clock.
Were you expecting her visit?
No, I wasn't. I was very surprised to see her.
Well, has she ever been to your house before?
No, never.
So her visit was very unusual.
It was indeed, yes.
What was the purpose of this visit?
You see, that day, she'd received notice from our board of directors of a transfer to another plant. Naturally, she was very upset about it. I thought at first she'd come to see me because she was hoping that I'd be able to help her in some way. But it turned out, much to my surprise, that she was blaming me for the transfer.
Blaming you?
Yes. I'm afraid the poor woman was quite distraught.
Well, had you caused this transfer?
Good Lord, no. Those sort of decisions are made by the board, not by me.
That's not true.
Mrs. Kaplan.
But, my lord, he's lying.
Mrs. Kaplan, I must ask you to be quiet, or I shall have you removed from the court. Go on, Mr. Ireland.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Mr. Osgood, can you describe the state of mind Mrs. Kaplan was in when she arrived at your house?
Yes? When my wife showed her into the lounge, I was quite startled by her disheveled appearance. I was genuinely sorry that she'd lost the job. I'd always enjoyed working with her and wanted to help her in any way I could, but I just didn't know how to approach her. Her behavior quite baffled me. She'd worked herself up into a state of hysteria is the only word I can think of to describe it, really.
Can you describe the nature of this hysteria in more detail?
Yes. As soon as I saw the state she was in, I offered her a chair and asked my wife to make her some coffee. I thought it might help, make her comfortable, try and calm her down a bit. But she started shouting at me.
Shouting what?
Something about me being patronizing. I was quite bewildered. It was as if I couldn't do a thing right. Then she let loose a whole stream of abuse. Well, you know what it's like when women become hysterical. It gets very vulgar and embarrassing. I thought the poor woman was on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
Yes, I see. Mr. Osgood, would you say that you knew Mrs. Kaplan quite well?
Quite well, yes, on a purely business level, of course.
Well, have you ever seen her behaving in the manner you've described before?
Good Lord, no. At the plant, she was always very pleasant. Perhaps a little cold and distant at times. But then that was one of her problems, of course. She couldn't relate very well to the men. You have to be fairly relaxed with them, and they appreciate you sharing the occasional joke with them. She found that difficult.
Would you say that this uncharacteristic behavior was due solely to her transfer?
It was partly due to that. But she'd obviously had far too much to drink.
How did you respond to her abusive accusations, Mr. Osgood?
Well, there's nothing much I could do, really, except listen. I remember I did tell her that I'd no intention of getting into an argument with her and asked her to calm down. As I say, it was rather embarrassing.
Did she leave of her own accord?
No. I suggested that she better leave my house. Politely but firmly. I'd had enough.
And then she left?
Yes.
Did she say anything as she left?
Yes, she did. Something about getting her revenge.
Could you remember the exact words?
I'll try. They were something like, I'm not going to take this lying down. You'll be sorry for this. By that time, I thought the poor woman had gone completely mad.
I'm not going to take this lying down. You'll be sorry for this.
Yes.
Did you reply?
I think I just laughed and said something like, I really don't know what you're talking about, something like that.
And what did you understand her to mean by this threat?
At the time, I had no idea. It certainly never entered my head that she might behave in the manner that she has done and try and bring my family into disrepute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osgood. No further questions, my lord.
Mr. Osgood, you and the complainant, Mrs. Kaplan, have never got on well together, have you?
I'm afraid I don't quite follow you. She wasn't a personal friend of mine, but a business colleague. And as such, I was always under the impression that we got on perfectly well.
Well, the complainant, Mrs. Kaplan, assures me you got on particularly badly, that you made her time at the plant unnecessarily unpleasant.
I'm genuinely sorry to hear that. And I'm afraid I'm not party to her private fantasies.
But weren't you particularly angry when she was appointed your production manager?
No. Why should I have been? Such appointments are made by the board at the top, and I respect their judgment.
I understand you had your own man lined up for the job, isn't that so?
The board asked me for my recommendations, and so, of course, I made my suggestions, as usual.
Isn't it the case that you were so prejudiced against Mrs. Kaplan's appointment that you continually wrote letters to the board?
My lord, surely we are getting off the point. The charge is rape, not unlawful dismissal.
I'm not altogether sure how relevant all this is, Mr. Ireland, but you chose to make an issue out of the complainant's state of mind when she called on Mr. Osgood. I must, in all fairness, allow the prosecution to put the complainant's point of view.
My lord.
My lord? Mr. Osgood, isn't it true that you caused Mrs. Kaplan's transfer by continually writing to the board of directors, complaining about her and making allegations that she was incompetent at her job?
It isn't true, no.
I see. Then were your objections to her appointment simply because she was a woman?
I told you, I had no objections to her appointment. I must admit I was a little anxious about her ability to build a good working relationship with the men, but I was assured that she had extensive experience in a plant similar to ours in Canada, and so I put those worries out of my mind.
Well, Mrs. Kaplan says that you told her she should go and work in ladies' hairdressing and leave men's work to men.
As I said, I'm afraid I wasn't party to her fantasy life.
Are you saying that you never said that?
It is quite untrue, yes.
I see. Now, this transfer meant an end to Mrs. Kaplan's promotion prospects. It also meant redundancy because the plant she was going to be transferred to was due to close in the year. As she received this news, she came to your house to express her very understandable anger towards you. But of course, in your eyes, Mrs. Kaplan could do no right, could she? If she conducted herself with decorum, you would say she was cold and distant. And if she lost her temper, then you would say she was hysterical and unbalanced. Isn't that so?
No. I judge her in the same way as I would judge anybody.
I suggest that in Mrs. Kaplan's case, Mr. Osgood, that is exactly what you are incapable of doing.
I beg your pardon?
Now, you say that when Mrs. Kaplan left your house, she threatened you.
Yes. And I honestly believe that that is what this trial is all about.
What do you mean by that?
You hear all the time about rape allegations made for vindictive reasons by misguided women. I've always prided myself on my judgment of character. But in Mrs. Kaplan's case, I was obviously wrong.
My lord, this witness's judgments are not on trial.
Yes, I think we should stick more closely to the facts, Mr. Bryant.
My lord, the bitter irony in most rape cases is embedded in men's convictions that most rape cases are false allegations. Indeed, my learned friend has called this witness to suggest a motive for false allegation. In reality, whereas men easily convince each other that women cry rape with ease and glee, most women who have been raped are very reluctant to report that rape because of their fear of public exposure, because they know that in the minds of a prejudiced public, a woman is still held responsible for being raped, even if that rape took place at the point of a knife and there was nothing at all she could do to prevent it. Rape qualifies as the most underreported crime that there is. And as you are well aware, my lord, statistics for false allegations of rape are a mere 2%, exactly the same as for false allegations for any other crime.
I think you've made your point, Mr. Bryant. Would you now continue with your cross-examination, sticking a little more closely to the present case?
My lord, Mr. Osgood, I suggest to you that when Mrs. Kaplan said, "I won't take this lying down," what she meant was she wanted to take the matter to the board of Meddings and ask for an inquiry.
That is a matter of opinion, surely, isn't it?
Now, you also claimed that Mrs. Kaplan was drunk when she came to your house.
She had had too much to drink, yes.
How do you know? Had you actually seen her drinking excessively?
No, I didn't see her. But then I wasn't with the lady before she arrived at my house, so I wouldn't have seen her. But I witnessed her behavior in my house, and I formed the opinion that she was drunk.
I suggest you're lying, Mr. Osgood.
I'm not a liar, sir.
Mrs. Kaplan has told us she had not been drinking heavily.
I'm a man of my word. I'm not a liar.
Mr. Osgood, your only son has been the main protagonist in a brutal and sordid rape attack.
Now, look, let's get this straight, shall we? It was not rape. I don't condone his behavior. Not one bit. But boys will be boys. And that's all he is, you know, a boy. Look at him, a boy. You can't expect a boy like him to cope with the advances of a woman like Mrs. Kaplan.
I don't suggest you're lying consciously, Mr. Osgood. You may well have convinced yourself that Mrs. Kaplan was sufficiently hysterical, unbalanced, and drunk that evening to seduce both your son and his two friends because you cannot face the truth.
I'm a realist, sir. I've faced more than one unpleasant thing in my life. I'm not someone who bends the truth to suit himself.
In this instance, Mr. Osgood, I suggest that that is exactly what you have done. Thank you, my lord. I have no more questions.
Having explained the law to you, it is now for you, each of you, to make up your minds and to reach a unanimous verdict. Remember that you don't leave your common sense and knowledge of the world outside the court. Court is part of everyday life. You don't become different people just because you sit on a jury. Now, it would be presumptuous of me to tell you which facts to accept and which to reject. Any facts that I mention are simply to remind you of the evidence. And because I mention something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree with it, though you may, if you so choose. Now, the evidence in this case is quite straightforward. The issue is well defined. There are no grey areas. The prosecution say that the three accused called at the house of Mrs. Kaplan on the flimsiest of excuses, talked their way into the house of this defenseless woman, and then raped her, each of them. The three defendants simply say they did no such thing, that she was only too glad to have them in the house, that she presented them with an opportunity to have sexual intercourse with her, and indeed encouraged them to do so. Well, it's a matter for you. Do you think that she would do that? Did she strike you as being that sort of person? You have to consider the evidence of each witness and consider the case of each defendant, for they are also witnesses. In this case, you may think that you can't distinguish between them, and the best thing to say is that it's all or nothing. Either all three are guilty or not one is guilty. Now, will you please retire and consider your verdict?
Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Please answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached verdicts on which you are all agreed?
No.
Have you reached verdicts on which the majority are agreed?
Yes.
And you find the defendant, Alan Marsden, guilty or not guilty of rape?
Guilty.
You find the defendant, Michael Harris, guilty or not guilty of rape?
Guilty.
And you find the defendant, Bernard Osgood, guilty or not guilty of rape?
Guilty.
The defendants were each sentenced to 4 years' imprisonment. A chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch another case in the Crown Court.